today we're going to be looking at adding integers. So integers are positive and negative numbers. The first strategy we're going to use is using a number line, and then after that we're going to learn how to use a rule for adding integers. So when we're working with a number line, we're going to start by placing our finger or a marker on the first integer. And then if the number being added is positive, we're going to move to the right on the number line. And if the number being added is negative, we're going to move to the left. So let's take a look at an example. So for example, we are looking at adding integers, and we're adding -6 and +2. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting our finger at -6, and then we're going to look at the next number. The next number is a +2. So when we're looking at positives, we're going to be moving to the right on our number line. And we're going to move to the right 2 spaces, 1, 2. So we can see that we are landing at -4. Okay, let's go ahead and try another example before we move on to learning the rule for addition. So here we have -3. Let's do one that maybe is not exactly like the last one we did. So let's look at a negative plus a positive. So we're starting this time at -1. So here we are at -1, and we're adding a negative number. So when we add a negative number, this time we're going to move to the left, and we're going to move to the left 5 spaces. So we would move 1 space, 2 spaces, 3, 4, 5, and we can see that we're landing at -6. So now if you think about what just happened in those last 2 examples, there's a couple different situations, and that's where we're going to start to look at what are the rules for when we are adding. So let's take a look here. Now, what can happen when we're adding 2 numbers is either the 2 numbers are going to have the same sign. So this would mean both of the numbers are positive. We don't really need to talk about that. We've been doing adding 2 positives since 1st and 2nd grade. But this could be both of the numbers are negative. So we have a negative number plus a negative number. That's like the one we just did. So we had -1 plus -5. And we saw that we started at -1 and we moved further and further and further to the left on our number line. And so we ended up in the negatives at -6. So the rule for this is that we would look at these 2 numbers and their absolute value. Their absolute value just means how many spaces are they from 0. So -1 is 1 space from 0. -5 is 5 spaces together. So 1 plus 5 is 6 spaces from 0, and then they would keep the negative sign. The sign would be the same as the numbers being added. So that's our first situation. Now the second thing that could happen, this is where it gets a little tricky, is that they have different signs. That means one of the numbers is positive and one of the numbers is negative. Now, in this situation, we're actually going to have 2 different types of problems. So I'm going to kind of divide our paper in half over here. So what we could have is we could have a negative plus a positive, and let's say like -1 plus +5. In this situation, the positive number is larger. So we would say that the positive number is more spaces from 0. That tells us whichever number is more spaces from 0, that's the absolute value, that tells us whether our answer is going to be positive or negative. So because the positive number is further from 0, our answer will be positive. Then this is where it gets tricky. We're going to find the difference between the 2 numbers. So we're actually going to subtract 5 minus 1 would land at +4. Now, let's look at what would happen if we switch that. If we had a +1 plus a -5. Very similar problem, but this time the number that's further from 0 is the negative. And so that means that our answer is going to have a negative sign, and we still would be subtracting them. 5 minus 1 would be 4. So the sign on our answer is going to match the number that is further from 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and try a couple problems using that new rule. So we have +1 and -2. So first we want to think about the two numbers that we're adding together and which one is further from 0. So if I think about my number line up here, and 0's in the middle, +1 is only one space from 0, but -2 would be over here, 2 spaces from 0. So -2 is further away. That tells us that our answer is going to be negative. Then, when the signs are different, like they are here, one number's positive and one number's negative, we're going to subtract. So 2 minus 1 gives us 1. So it's -1. Now, if we use the number line strategy that we talked about at first, we would have started at -1 and we would have moved to the left 2 spaces, and look at that. We ended at -1. So again, we have another problem, example B, where the numbers are different signs, right? One of them's negative, one of them's positive. We think about, okay, -8, +5, which one's further from 0? -8 is further from 0. It's 8 spaces from 0. So that tells us our answer will be negative. Then all I need to do is I need to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 8 minus 5, the absolute values of the numbers, and that gives me a -3 as my answer. So go ahead and continue using the rules to practice subtracting and adding negatives and positives, and you can always double check it with a number line.